Thank you. All right, so Mr. Beaudreau, you were a former public school teacher and administrator. You
Mm,
are co-founder of the Apogee Strong program with Tim Kennedy, and you've made it your life's mission to create opportunity and an alternate path for young kids around the world.
hmm.
Yes.
Spot on.
Yes. And so the first thing I wanted to dive in was what you called the game. Because at a very young age, I thought I was kind of crazy when I spoke to my classmates and my peers, and I told them, like, there's a pattern. Like, getting grades is easy. Just
Mm,
work on something else when you finish your work, go
mm,
do something that you like, just get class over with and jump into whatever interests you. And so people, I saw people were really struggling with their grades. And when you explained it, you said there's a pattern. You can see what teachers want. You can kind of befriend them and get your way through school really easily.
mm,
I was like, yeah, he knows what I'm talking about.
mm.
So tell me, what is the game? What is its purpose, and how does it work?
I love that question. So you're talking about the game of school. One of the things you said before you even mentioned the game is you said you get to work with people on taking an alternate path. And that's correct. But what happens culturally is people hear alternate path, and especially people my age, when we grew up, anybody taking an alternate path or an alternative path, what it usually meant, what you were saying without saying it, was that this is somebody who is getting in trouble. This is somebody who is on their way to jail. This is somebody who is doing, so they're doing an alternative path because everybody else who's not getting in trouble is doing the right thing by going to school. Right. And so, what I'm trying to get people to understand is that this game of schooling has been designed to make you think exactly that. It has been designed culturally to make everybody think this is how somebody gets educated and moves forward in life, and anybody outside of that system, well, they're doing something wrong. It is a religious belief. That is the game. So the game is not just go through school and learn the things that school teaches you, which is to be apathetic about your life, which is somebody else will always know better, which is there is a specific thing that everybody has to do at a specific time. Otherwise, you're a failure. It's not just that. It's understanding that you've got to remove yourself from that completely and play the game of life, because those are two different games. One does not prepare you for the other. So I love that you framed it that way. You think about what we're the alternate to. We're the alternate to slavery.
Okay. Yeah, I never really thought about that way. People thinking of like one way or another, while there is different options that they
Mhm.
don't allow us to talk about.
That's right.
And so I've been talking to a lot of young people because I also mentor them. And so
Mhm.
Bedros, or Mr. Julian, as I like to call him, he
Mhm.
kind of pushed me towards like this mentoring path.
Mhm.
And so I've been talking to a lot of kids, and they want to be smart. And they're like, how do I get smarter? How do I become successful? And they seem to associate that with school. So they're like, I want to
Mhm.
get good grades. I'm like, why? And I push them, and they don't know why. They just know success is school, it's the grades. And so how would you redefine what learning, being smart, or being intelligent means?
I love that question, man. So, and I would go back, usually go back to the individual. When you're saying things like smart or successful, I would ask them, well, what does that mean to you? Right? What does success look like for you? What does smart look like for you? And as they define that, if they're only defining it based on, well, this is how well I do at school, and that's what shows that you're smart. Okay, sounds good. So then, with that train of logic, do adults stop being smart because they no longer go to school? Or is that the precursor to being smart? Because if that was the only way to be smart, well, gosh, why do people ever stop? Because if that's the way humans work, then God, I'm 44. I should still be going to school because otherwise now I'm not going to be right. So that whole concept kind of goes out the window when you follow the logic train. It's like when people ask, I love it when people ask my kids, well, what grade are you in? And they're like, I'm not sure, what grade are you in? And people think that's like a funny question, right? Like it'd be a funny question to ask a 40-year-old what grade he or she is in. But the reason that seems weird is because it's actually a weird question. It's not just a weird question for them, it's a weird question for anybody. It's not a real thing. It's this made up construct that we have. If it doesn't apply across the board, then it doesn't apply. So being smart or learning inherently can't just be while you're in school because gosh, it means there's no way to be smart, up until you go to school, there's no way to be smart afterwards. That's clearly not the case. Learning is the default setting of a human being. Learning is anything that is pushing you forward in any avenue, period. You could grow to be 120 years old studying all the things under the sun day in, day out, and you're going to know 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of all there is to know. You're never going to know it all. Learning just means you are moving forward. That's it. When you simplify it like that, you see it's everything, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
The only thing that's not learning is stagnation.
Okay. And so to someone who, okay, well, before I jump into that question, you talk about how the prime educator in a kid's life is the parent, right?
Correct. Very much so.
Um, I don't know if I completely disagree with that, but on some level I disagree because I feel
Sure.
like now more than ever, divorce rates are over the roof. Pe Parents are absent in a lot of kids' life. And while
Mhm.
some kids, don't know which path to take or how to raise themselves or educate themselves, a lot of kids do. And a lot of kids are doing a pretty good job at that.
Mhm.
And to someone, and I've talked to a lot of kids who are like, hey, my parents aren't in my life, right? I'm the
Mhm.
one who's raising myself and raising my
Mhm.
standards and defining which values I want to live by.
Mhm.
To someone who wants to raise themselves or just set new standards for themselves and
Mhm.
develop these values, how would they go about doing it right? Like, what is the environment that they have to create for themselves, cultivate? What standards should they put in their life when
That's a great
when they're to
question.
guide them?
That's a great question. So, and I want to qualify a couple of things too that you said and that I've said. And so I absolutely get what you're saying and agree with you. Like there are people when I say that the parent is the primary educator in the life of that young person, it is with a couple of assumptions. One, that their parents are around.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's one of those. If they don't have parents around, then I do not assume that their parent is still, although there is something to be said for, if you've got an absentee father, there's something to learn there too. There's still a very strong emotional primary education that's happening right there. But and ultimately, all education ends up being self-education. So there does come a time in a transition, whether you have parents there or you don't have parents there, that you transition into being the primary educator for yourself. Ideally, the people around you help you do that sooner rather than later. At
Yeah.
this point, I'm really confident. I'm always in front. Like I have a 13-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
I have 13 and 11 and an 8, two girls and a boy. And right now I'm very much the primary educator. My wife's very much the primary educator for all of them. But my 13-year-old is really stepping into uh, kind of overtaking that position for us, as she should, which is great. So she is now becoming the primary educator, right? But you
Right.
said a key thing. You're talking about the environment. That's always uh, the precursor to a good education. What is the environment that is around? So parents are responsible for setting up the environment for the young person to grow. And as that young person gets older, he or she is responsible for the environment. So what I would say is there's no right way. There's a million right ways to get educated. It is how do you want to be educated? How do you define success for you? What are your goals? What are your ambitions? And how do you remain curious? And once you kind of have an idea of who you are, then you set up the environment to have the right people, the right mentors, you tackling the right books, you're watching the right content creators, you are, leaning into the actions that are moving you towards wherever you're going, and then you're also eliminating any of the distractions that take you away from that. You want to keep it as simple as possible in terms of the system you are developing for yourself. Find the right people, stay away from the wrong people. Find the right goals and paths and things to tinker with and get curious about. Stay away from anything that's driving you away from those goals. Keep it simple.
Okay. And so I'm guessing that when it comes to that, there are a lot of habits to be learned and a lot of habits to be broken. And
Mhm.
I've heard you talk about the habits that school teaches us, the
Mhm.
habit of obedience, of looking up to someone, trying to find someone to tell me what to do, an
Mhm.
authority, or
Mhm.
just not asking for help because it feels like cheating.
Mhm.
You said ideally we should prevent those habits from ever being put into someone's, like raise people from a young age to not develop those habits. And
Mhm.
and then you work with the parents to kind of unlearn those habits.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So if someone is around their teens or in their 20s,
Mhm.
what can they do to prevent those habits from growing on them even further or to keep themselves from, yeah, just learning those
Yeah.
habits?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You have to take a look and see where a system has you in those habits to begin with. And you got to realize that systems are designed to perpetuate themselves. So we operate in a lot of systems, especially in this country. You've got religious systems and medical systems and education systems, and none of them inherently are wrong in and of themselves, but you have to understand they are there to perpetuate themselves. So the most simple way, don't confuse simple with easy, by the way, but the most simple way to keep that away from you, and that's not just if you're a young person, not just a teenager, this is as an adult too, is to continue to question your own thoughts and beliefs. Critical thinking. We say it all the time in turn, and everybody goes, yes, everybody needs it. Yes, everybody needs the critical thing. Yes, everybody. But they don't understand what the definition is. The definition of critical thinking really boils down to thinking about your thinking. Why do I believe this? Why do I think this is true? Why do I think this is false? And can I prove the other side? I'm a huge proponent of people steel manning their beliefs. That means I want to go, okay, why do you believe that? Interesting. That's not what I believe. Can I prove you right? Not can I prove myself right to you? Can I prove you right? That's going to force me to actually think and
Right.
dive deep, right? And so when you do that and you're continuously looking for ways to prove yourself wrong, you inherently lose the apathy that school teaches you because you get back to the default setting of a human, which is curiosity.
Okay. And if
It's
some,
just it's just hard to do.
yeah, if someone's emotionally attached
Yes.
to being
Yes.
right or just ending the conversation because they don't like having hard conversations. My sister's this way. Like if I try to challenge her on something, she'll shut me down.
Mhm.
How do you break that emotional attachment?
Yeah. If I can find the answer to that, I'll be a wealth because that's the reality. So what's funny is I just got off a coaching call with a number of men that are in our program, but we are training them to coach within our program.
Yeah.
And so that's what some of them are struggling with right now. They're like, oh my gosh, these people will not emotionally detach. And at some point, as an educator, as a parent, as a coach, you're going to have to get comfortable with an uncomfortable fact that not everybody will detach from those emotions. And it's not your fault. All you can do is ask the pertinent questions, open the door, and invite them to come in. You can try to shove somebody through the door all you want, but if
Right.
they don't voluntarily do it, they'll turn around and run back out. It's one of the hardest things, especially when it's good people that are coaching, because you want those people to walk forward. You want them to see. And I don't know if, this isn't the point, but you may have if you have a faith background, don't have a faith background. Anybody who hears this, whether you have a faith background, don't have one, that's not the point. So take this story for what it is. You can take it as a true story, you can take it as a parable, but God himself takes people, he took people out of Egypt, took them out of slavery. They were slaves in bondage. The creator of all things takes them out of slavery and goes, okay, I will take care of you. You're no longer slaves. You are now free. By the way, freedom has some responsibility attached to it, but I'm right here with you. Come along with me. And it did not take them long before they were like, ugh, I don't want to do the work. This guy, Moses, that you sent us to lead us, we actually want to kill him. God, I don't even want to hear your voice. Could you shut up, please? So if the creator of the universe is like, hey, I'm going to pull people from slavery to freedom and give them the keys to the kingdom, which is just taking responsibility, and they told him to shut up, they're going to tell you to shut up too. At some point they are. So that's okay.
Okay. And you touched on a point that I'm going to come back on because it's one of my questions in just a second. But
Mhm.
you're doing something with Apogee Strong. And
Mhm.
so you're creating this new normal. What is this new normal and these new standards that you're setting?
Yeah, the new normal is a family that defines education for themselves, with the only caveat being we ask, what does sovereignty look like in all of these arenas? Seth Godin asked me one time, what should education be for? Nobody'd ever asked me that. I'd been in education forever. Nobody'd ever asked me that. So the closest thing I could think of is it's for sovereignty, for freedom. It's for me to get to the point where I can decide what I do, when I do it, with who I do it with, without hurting anybody else. So that's what I want for all of our families. And that's a full family approach. So we're building things that are opportunities for young men, young women, men, women, full families to define what sovereignty and freedom looks like in their lives, in their relationships, in their spiritual walk, in their physical journey, in their businesses, in their finances. What does sovereignty look like? How close can you get in all these areas, and how can we help you get there? We're doing that across the board. Mentorship programs, physical campuses.
That's amazing. When I saw your webpage and your documentary, I was blown away. But I also feel like people who find your page or find your videos would also ask, aren't some things in school still crucial? Aren't some subjects still a part of learning and what humans have to know? Is there a way that you kind of decide what still needs to be learned and what doesn't?
Yeah. So I'll ask, what does the if I, we get that question all the time, and I always ask, cool, what do all humans need to know? What is it? Give it to me. Like define it.
um, I guess good communication
There
to
you go.
speak
I
about.
would agree with that.
Okay.
Meta skills, yeah. Good communication is a meta skill that all people need.
Yeah. I guess
See,
reading and writing.
reading and writing. Yep, you bet. And what is the purpose of reading and what is the purpose of writing? See what so I'm not saying you're wrong,
Yeah.
but this is how I respond is
Okay.
because you want people to think,
Think
because
about.
what they're wanting to do is regurgitate,
Right.
wanting to say things like life works in subjects when it provably doesn't,
Right.
right? So kids need to know science. Okay, great. What does that mean? They need a microscope. Do they? Do they need a microscope? I don't use a microscope. Does everybody need is that a meta skill? So I agree with you on science, but what we really need is the ability to dive into the scientific method. It's questioning everything and testing everything. So yes, science is valuable, but to me, I think that's what it's valuable for. What do you think it's valuable for? Right? You open up those kinds of conversations. So we talk a lot about the fact that there are meta skills. And when the meta skill, the way I define that, is something that everybody does need, but you'll find that those are few and far between. I would agree with you. Communication is a meta skill. With AI, all it doesn't matter. The ability to talk to another human, to be able to articulate what you believe, to be able to listen to them and understand what they're saying and weigh that and go back, and that's a skill that's always going to be needed. To be able to take care of my own personal health, that's always going to be needed. I'm always going to need to understand how to be physically healthy. That's a meta skill. Other skills, you can argue, not necessarily like trigonometry as a school subject. Do some people need trigonometry? You bet. Does everybody? No. So then it's not a meta skill. So
Okay.
in that case, we make sure that all opportunities are there for people to acquire the skills that they need, as well as all things there to acquire the skills that you want.
Okay. I love that. I feel like people would really just think about that for a second.
I hope so, because it's logical.
Right.
You
Right.
know, I mean, it's provable. It's how everybody's life works. You're really good at certain things that I'm not, and you're going to need to be better at things than I'll never need to touch, and vice versa. That's
Right.
okay.
Right. And for my last two questions,
Hmm.
these are very broad. What is the best way to wake someone up from this way of thinking?
Questions are the only chance you have.
So you just ask questions and
Ask questions.
curiosity.
That's it. It's just asking questions. It's getting them to, because if the reality is I come tell you something that you've got such a strong cognitive dissonance against, it doesn't matter how obvious or factual it is if you're emotionally tied to something different. It won't matter. I can beat you over the head with all the facts and logic in the world, and you will deny it to my face because you can't emotionally jump over the gap to get from where you are to where you, right? So it's a series of questions to ultimately get you there. If you've never seen The Matrix, I highly recommend seeing it. Yeah, because it is, and it's funny because people say, "Oh, Matrix is a documentary." I mean, it kind of is. It's an expose on human behavior.
Right.
We
Yeah.
jump right back into the things we've always said we knew. It's that. So questions, questions, and questions.
Okay. And really quickly, I just remember this. I heard you talk about this on a podcast on where you said that, sometimes you talk to teachers and they know that they aren't able to do their own thing because they're trapped, or you talk to students and they know that they're
Yep.
just playing a game. And
Yep.
if I don't know how big or small the percentage is of the people that are aware,
Mhm.
but why do you think nothing, like there hasn't been any drastic change or they don't do anything about it?
Yeah, because it's a great question. In my experience, people are more comfortable in a well-known, well-defined slavery than an unknown freedom. So for them, they get that they are not free. There are many people who get that they are not free. Those people that are reaching out specifically around that, they understand they're not free.
Yeah.
But the thought of the responsibility of stepping outside of the cage and no longer living in the zoo and going into the wild when they've never done it scares them because they're like, will I be able to figure it out? Oh, I don't know. But I've got this slavery thing figured out. And gosh, I guess I'm not dead. I guess it, and they'll start to justify that. So you've got the different levels of slavery, right? You've got the people that are slaves and don't know they're slaves. They don't know. They think they're completely free, and so they're gonna stay there. The people that are frustrated and they see it, it is always fear that is stopping them from stepping out and taking responsibility.
Okay.
Always.
And my last question, and this is kind of out of my own personal curiosity, do you
Mhm.
think that on some level, in whether it's decades or a century, there's going to be a way to completely undo this whole system that has been created?
It's a great question. Um, I oscillate back and forth on this. I because of my own obsession with this and what we're doing from the Apogee standpoint, like we are building the alternative and making the alternative accessible.
Right.
I do also believe that what I see with culture and parenting, that we are not heading in a great direction from a societal standpoint. And in that case, I don't believe government schooling will go away anytime soon. And I do actually want good people still there because there are people who are still going to take a long time to get out of the slave mindset. They'll still send their kids there, or they won't have good parents. They'll still send their kids there, what have you. And I need good people there too. So I don't think we completely eradicate it in any time in the next, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. But I'm hopeful for a little further out that we do. But I don't see it happening anytime in the next couple decades.
Okay.
I
Gotcha.
wish I did. I wish I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And so anybody watching this, a kid, maybe someone who is interested in a program or seeing if there's a campus near them, where would they go?
So apogeestrong.com. We'll continuously work on that website and update everything. You can check us out on Instagram at Apogee Program, or you can follow my personal stuff just at my name too, and I'll always point people to the right direction too.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Bedreau. All right, guys, if you liked this show and episode with Mr. Matt Beaudreau, then I would suggest you go check out his page. He's doing some amazing things. And if you are interested in seeing, is there another way for me to learn, another way for me to be educated, another path for me to take, then check out if there are any physical schools near you. They're not expensive. It's not a private school. It's unlike anything you've ever seen before. And I would just out of curiosity, check if there are any near you at apogee.com, apogeestrong.com. I'll link it down below in the show notes. I think this might have been one of the best conversations I've had. If you are interested and you're like, I don't have any campuses near me, again, my parents aren't here or they don't support me, and I just want one-on-one help, then you can always reach out to me on Instagram, send me a screenshot of this, or DM me the word strong, what the fuck am I saying, transform, and I'll help you out personally. Right, don't forget to click the subscribe button, share this with anybody that may need it, and just hit the like button if that's all you want to do. And I'll see you guys later.